Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to another edition of Jazz Talk. Today on our show, we have with us a very special guest, and I'm so excited that he's on. He's been on the scene for over 50 years and has worked with many greats from Oscar Peterson to Horace Silver, George Benson, Nina Simone, and Wynton Marsalis, to name a few. He is a drummer and record owner label. Please welcome to Jazz Talk, the legendary Mr. Alvin Queen. How are you, sir?
Thank you very much, Preston. It's my pleasure for being here with you. Finally, we got together.
Finally, we got together, man. It's so good to have you on. I was interested in knowing about your background, your upbringing, Alvin, how you got started in all this. I understand that you're from New York, the Bronx.
Yeah, I was born in the Bronx, but I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York.
Okay, New York. Well, tell us, man, what life was like coming up, how you got involved in music. I know that you started playing drums at an early age. I think you were like 8 years old or something like that. But tell us about music, man, how you discovered it.
Well, but at that time, back there was music all over the place. The neighborhood. Yeah. Your mother used to iron clothes and sing. And, my mother I grew up with like listening to Ruth Brown, Big Joe Turner, and the Shake, Rattle, and Roll days and Jerry Butler and things. There was music in the neighborhood all around. At the time, there was, and Mount Vernon is a small city, 4 square miles, right north of Manhattan. Yeah. And we had a lot of little places, but it was segregated. There was train tracks separating us. So the music in the neighborhood generated. We were always creating something. Yeah. And from that time, I went to school. I remember I went to Grimes School. My brother took me there. He was a percussionist in the school at the time. Okay. And with the marching bands, I used to steal his sticks out of the drawer when he hide them in his drawer, and I go bang on the concrete and stuff. And to make a story short, I ended up joining the marching band myself. And I remember we have a street called 4th Street, Mount Vernon, New York, and it's Christmas time. I went shopping down there with my mother, and I looked up at the window and I saw a guy, and by the name of Andy Lalino, Italian guy, just came home from the Korean War, and he was teaching a kid in the window drums. So we were poor. My mother was welfare. We had 5 kids, and we didn't have no money for lessons. So I looked up there, and I used to have a shoe shine box. Yeah. I used to go to all the skin joints, where they were playing numbers on Saturday afternoon. I used to make my little change there. And then I said, let me go up there. I tried to go up there with the shoe shine box. So I said, sir, how you doing? You want a free shine? So that was my gimmick to get up there. And then he says, no. He says, you play drums? I said, yeah, with the school marching band. I said, I sure would really like this. So he said, tell your mother call me. And my mother called. At that time, lessons were $5 a week. But my mother couldn't afford it because she had 5 kids. So after a while, she took me out of the lesson and said, Andy, I can't afford to do it anymore. He said, Miss Queen, the kid is nice. I don't want him in the street. He can come here, sweep, help me clean up, and I'll give him his free lesson.
Oh, man, that's fantastic.
And from that, once I did that, I remember one time that there was a club in Mount Vernon called Ambassador Lounge. Okay. And there was Richard Leverster, and let me think, it was many local musicians there. And the drummer didn't show up. It was a Friday night. I think I was 11, 12 years old. And the guy said, go, my father was a bar manager, and he had the name of Deadeye. They gave him Deadeye. Yeah. And the guy said, go ask Deadeye, could we borrow the kid? So they went to the bar and said, Dad, we need the kid. They said, the kid's not old enough to be in there, so he needs a chaperone. So what they did was, he said, you're going to have to talk to Alvin's mother. So they all came to the house. I was looking at TV and said, Alvin, Mr. Jimmy Hill is here, and Richard Leverster is here. Richard Leverster, can you help them out at the club? I said, at the club. So they said, you think you can do it? I said, I don't know. If it's music coming from Dad's record collection, sure, I know all the music in there. He played every day. And I lived next door to a record store where they played, you know, with the speaker outside. So I went down there and I did that job, and that was the introduction to most of that, because I was brought up in a church, a holiness church, and in two churches, and one, God is Christ, which was a church Denzel Washington's father was the minister at.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Denzel's from Mount Vernon, New York. He's 4 years younger than me, but we were brought up together. And then most of those guys turned into Ray Williams, Gus Williams. They turned into famous basketball players. A lot of basketball players come out of Mount Vernon. Jay Hogard, the vibraphonist, he's out of there. And Nina Simone used to live there. Okay, Art Carney comes from there. You know, with the Honeymoon, Jackie Gleason, he comes from there. Dick Clark comes from there. You know, so it's a very small city, which was creative. And the way I really got into it, you know, my father, you know, Black folks, they got their hair processed. You know, they all had that, the Ellington and the, you know, and my father would have to go every 2 weeks to have his hair processed. So he said, Alvin, they got a show at the Apollo Theater. I said, oh man, I was waiting for this. And he would take me down to the Apollo. He was having his hair done at Sugar Ray Robinson's barbershop. And I was a kid, and Cannonball and Miles, all of them used to go in there. But I didn't know them by names at that time, you see?
Right.
So then after we left Sugar Ray Robinson's barbershop, we would always go to the Apollo Theater to catch his show, okay?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the Jackson 5 there, Mary Wells there, Smokey Robinson there. I saw Count Basie with Arthur Price Stop, saw him there. Reuben Phillips used to have the big band there. And then what happened was, after seeing all these shows and singers and Pigby Markham, they were all there at the time before they went to Hollywood. Red Fox, they were all there. You see, all there. And then what happened was they were having this different affairs, and the guy who taught me, Andy Lalino, was more like in charge of me because my mother gave him the authority. So he said, Miss Queen, there's a show downtown. I'd like to take Alvin to be a part of that show. So she said, yeah, I put my little suit on, dressed up, and he took me down to Roseland in Manhattan. And Roseland is where I met Elvin Jones.
I was about to ask you about that, man. I saw a picture of you as a kid with Elvin with his arm around you. And I understand that you were able to meet these cats and go up on stage with Art Blakey, Philly Joe Jones, and Elvin. Are you serious?
Yeah, that was, that picture comes from Roseland, 1962. That was Samuel Arnold's drum show.
Wow. So you were like 12 years old then, right?
Yeah, Charlie Passett was there.
Oh, man.
So after that success came, then they had Gretsch Drum Night.
Yeah.
And when they had Gretsch Drum Night, this guy asked my parents again, could I take Alvin down there?
Right.
So I had met Elvin, and Elvin adopted me like a father. I met him in 62. So 1963, I think it was Red Garland, and I think it probably maybe was Paul Chambers on bass. Okay. They always use a piano player and a bass player to open the setup with.
Right.
Okay. And they had 3 or 4 sets of drums across the stage, which they would have Chico Hamilton, Mel Lewis, Charlie Passett, Art Blakey, Max Roach, and Elvin Jones. They were the featured drummers, which were advertised for Gretsch drums.
Right.
Okay. So this was the event that Elvin said, that's my son, so and so and so. And they put me up on the stage, and I played so wonderful at 12 years old. I was more like the child prodigy at that time.
Wow.
I was right under Tony Williams, right under there.
Woo.
And then what happened was I got a lot of recognition from that. I remember Wes Montgomery was there, Eric Dolphy was there.
Wow.
All the main, you know, Birdland was a hang place. It was a hangout place. That's what it was. So at that age, I remember that Joe Newman was around or something. And because I was a child protege, some record company hired him to be the music director for my first record, which never came out. Wow. And I think I was about 12 years old. And Joe Newman hired Zoot Sims he hired Zoot Sims, Art Davis on bass, and he hired Hank Jones and Joe and he played trumpet.
Yeah.
Half of the record Hank Jones couldn't make, so he was at NBC at the time. Ed Sullivan, he was over there. So Hank called the replacement of he had the replacement of Harold Mayburn. So when I met Harold Mayburn, he was 22 years old. That's how old he was. Okay, so that record was done. Then afterwards, I got kind of in the clique, and I was running. Sometimes play hooky from school, and I was running errands for this guy from Mount Vernon to Manhattan, where you catch to go down to Grand Central Station, and you walk across town. During this time period, they had the Metropole Club. Okay, and 12 noon, you could see Henry Red Allen and Red Noble, Gene Krupa, Cozy Cole. You know, all the music at the time was done in Manhattan. It was not done in California. So you saw all these guys all day long, and you heard them rehearsing with the big bands. And I used to go down to Papa Joe Jones at a drum school, 50th and 8th Avenue. And Cozy Cole was down the block. He had another studio down there. And at that time, it was just beautiful. Yeah. Then the big event came. It was during the John Coltrane's live recording.
Okay? Yeah, I wanted to ask you something about that. You met him when you were like 12 years old too, didn't you?
Yeah, well, the whole thing with that, I didn't know what was happening because I saw John Coltrane in 1961, 62 at the Apollo Theater when he played the My Favorite Things thing. Elvin was there, but Steve Davis was there. But the problem was, in history, that was the longest jazz tune ever played. Because I remember Symphony Sid in New York used to say, ladies and gentlemen, you know, I used to go to bed with my head on the pillow because I had to get up and go to school. And I used to listen to Symphony Sid. Yeah. And he said, well, that's John Coltrane. If you want to hear him, you go down to the Village Gate. And he would, two minutes of airtime on the radio, he would turn it off, fade it out. Because 13 minutes was long at that time.
Yeah.
So then they had, when I went to Birdland, they had Terry Gibbs. They had every club in New York, in America, had two bands, just about. You had an opening act and you had the featured act. The club started 9 at night, finished at 3, 4 in the morning. You see? And they had, the opening act was Terry Gibbs, okay, for John Coltrane. I remember that march. You can find the on YouTube, you can find the video. But that was March, and me and Terry talked about it. And there was Alice McLeod. She was the piano player in Terry Gibbs' band. Because there's only two women he had was Terry Pollan and Alice McLeod. Okay, at that time. And that was the time when Alice and John met. Yeah. Okay. So John Coltrane, I remember Andy took me in Birdland and Elvin said, ask my son. And he grabbed me and he set me at the table with his wife. You know, his wife, my wife's name was Shirley at the time. You see? And as John was playing, even during the recording, I think it was. And Elvin used to get, wow, the kid has got to learn. The kid's got to learn. And he picked me up and put me up on the bandstand. And I remember John kept saying, Elvin, get the kid, get the kid. So, you know, I'm young trying to imitate Elvin. Yeah. Right. And it was like, that was the biggest part of my life. That's where it really started.
It's incredible, man.
It started right there. And Wes Montgomery and all of them, Edgar Bateman from Philadelphia, Mickey Roker, Jimmy Cobb, you know, they were all, see, Train was special, like a Tony Williams. Or, you see, one thing you gotta understand with the music, you didn't just go to school and start playing music. You had to have something to offer to bring in the band. That's something when I learned from Oscar Peterson. He said, I hired you to don't contribute your spiritual to this band so that we can go to another level. If you can't bring me to that level, then I have to get somebody else.
You know what's incredible, Mr. Queen, is how you were exposed to all these giants at such a young age. That's almost like unheard of for a little kid 11, 12, 13 years old to be around all these masters. And I understand that you were lying about your age and sneaking into these jazz clubs to get in, I guess, to see these people, you know?
Well, they would give me, older people took time with you. He's a
Yeah,
nice kid, give him a Coca-Cola and put him in the corner.
right,
He
right.
wants to listen. And, to sit there and watch out Bob Blakey's feet and Elvin feet and to know how they do certain things. See,
Right.
I started out really with the Hammond B3 organ.
Yeah, man.
And every club in Harlem had an organ. And I started with George Braith had the organ, Billy Garner, okay, and Grant Green. And then I started with Lonnie Smith.
You play
And
with,
then
yeah.
then I went to, there used to be a club called it used to be on 145th Street and 8th Avenue. And we
Okay.
were the house band in there, George Benson. And when you were working with an artist, the other ones would get off, they came by and visit. That's how you begin to meet people.
Man, that is unbelievable.
And from there, we had a guy, he was a black booking agency in Harlem. His name was Jimmy Boyd.
Jimmy
He was
Boyd.
booking the black musicians.
Yeah.
And that's when I started meeting Grant Green, Freddie Roach, Clarence Palmer. All the cats came through New York. And, one time I was in Chicago, I'll never forget that. And they had the Union Hotel. I was with Horace Silver, 1969. And somebody said, come on, let's hang out. I'm young, drinking. So I said, let's go down there. And I had the opportunity to meet the Babyface Willette.
Man, you're blowing me away, Alvin. I was going to ask you that. I guess in your teens, as you're developing, playing, and meeting people, you hooked up with Horace Silver. How did you get that gig? Because I guess Billy Cobham had left, and then after that, you took over.
Well, Billy Cobham, Horace, I met also at Birdland
When you were younger.
During the Tokyo Blues album, when he did it. He
Yeah.
was at Birdland with Roy Brooks. That's where he
Yeah.
was down at the time.
Okay.
And he needed a drummer. And Horace always had, you had to do an audition for him. He would hire 10 drummers. So a lot of drummers come to the audition and they would play the faster tempos, but Horace wasn't playing like that. He was playing in the middle of blues. If you couldn't hold it together and shuffle, then he'd say, I got the call, Alvin, I decided to take you as a new drummer. And I told my father, what? With Horace Silver song from my father, So
that was big, man. That was big,
Yeah, so the first gig I had with Horace was in 1969, Pittsburgh. And it was in the group was John B. Williams, Benny Maupin, and Randy Brecker. And I didn't have a suit, and they had 3 pawn shops on Broadway at the time. So I bought this $30, this big baggy suit. I didn't even have a chance to have it tailored. The musicians teach me, they say, oh, you'll be all right if you wind this up.
Right.
Wind this up. So what happened was, I got that same thing from Horace Silver. It's, hey man, let me tell you one thing. You gotta smoke this band. If you don't wind this band up, I'm gonna have to get another drummer. So I never forget that Saturday at the matinee, that Saturday matinee. Boy, I tore the club up. I blew the club up in there. I mean, this is my gig, man.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
After that, then we opened up in New York at the Club Baron on 32nd and Lenox. And Jack McDuff used to live across the street in the project. Harold Vick was living in the project. Montego Joe was in. Everybody was in there, And Horace Silver at the Baron, Billy Paul was the opening act.
The singer Billy Paul? Me and Mrs. Jones, Billy Paul? Okay.
Yeah, but he wasn't famous then. He was singing bluesette. He started out as a jazz singer.
Okay.
So he was singing bluesette, and he opened up for Horace Silver. And then when Philadelphia International moved in on him, me and Mrs. Jones. That's how what happened.
Wow, that's incredible, man.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And all those records from Jimmy Boyd. Jimmy Boyd got me a job at John Bowden, Scepter Records at the time. The Scepter Records, Dionne Warwick was there, and they had Hob. And all of those gospel records, they don't give you credit on the back of it, but I did all of those. The Swan Silver Tones, the Caravel, caravans, right? Caravans, whatever they call. And I did all of Shirley Caesar's records.
Man.
Every one of her beginning records. I did all of those.
Alvin,
Five Blind Boys from Alabama. I did
Blind
that.
Boys from Alabama. Yeah, yeah, I know them very well.
Yeah, I
Now,
did
how did you? I was going to ask you after working with Horace, you went on, I guess, and played with George Benson. How did you hook up with George, man?
Because Horace Silver takes a vacation every year for 2 to 3 months.
Oh,
And I
okay.
needed a gig, and he laid the band off. And when he laid the band off, I got hooked up with George Benson. I tried to get hooked up with George Benson. And George used to have this Ford raggedy van. We say, we were raggedy, man. We could, you know, we put the organ in there and the
Right.
drums and Ronnie Cuba. And George's father used to travel with us, you know, and we would go to Buffalo, New York. I remember one time we were working at a club called BMO's across the street, and it was a snowstorm. On the opposite side of the street was the Pine and Grill, where somebody would fight all the time, go flying through the window. And the band which was playing in the window came out to be the Ohio Players, you see.
Are you serious? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And then the club we were in, what happened was, it was a snowstorm, there was no people. So we were playing like rehearsing. So the club owner said, BMO says, well, what are you playing for? I said, well, man, we want to get paid. He said, I'm your boss, I'm gonna pay you. Why don't you take a break? Ain't nobody coming in, and have a drink. And we took a break and had a drink. Car pulls up, it's BB King and two ladies. You know, so they came by to see George. So we talked with George. He says, George, you know one thing? If you change your rhythm a little bit, you could be successful. George changed, and that's where Breezing came in.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's when he started, I guess, becoming more commercial. His music started to change. But I guess he was influenced by Wes Montgomery probably more than anyone. That was like his guy, you know. But wow, that's incredible, man. What a story. You know,
Well,
what you just told.
you had the market, and what happened with the market? George was not a singer. He sung in the car.
Right.
He liked Ronnie Dyson and the little guy, little Jimmy Scott.
He also loved Nat King Cole
imitated
too.
those all the time, singing in the car, driving.
Right.
And what happened was, when Wes Montgomery died,
yeah,
okay, they needed another Wes, and George fit that.
Gotcha. Okay.
You see, and because we did a record, the other side of Abbey Road, George did that record.
I remember that.
And we always had an organ trio with saxophone player, something like that. And that record, we did the Johnny Carson show in New York. And that record had strings. Everybody said, where's the strings? Where's the so? That was a downhill in a way, that record. But as soon as he did Breezing, it pulled all the other records up.
Yeah.
And then he became into that singer. But he was not singing on the stage. When I first met, he was playing.
He was just playing. Interesting.
Matter of fact, we did a record in his garage.
Really?
He was living in the Bronx, White Plains Road. And he was living there. He had 2 kids. I remember them running around the living room table and everything. We did a record in his garage with Charles Covington, him. And one of the tunes I remember was Abraham Martin and John, the one which Mom's Mabel used to sing. She sung.
Yeah.
But you know, as through George, and then I started working with
Charles
Ronnie.
Tolliver?
It's before. No, Tolliver. I joined. Tolliver saw me somewhere with Horace Silver.
Oh, okay.
And I got a call from him, and then Tolliver told me, he said, I'd like for you to join me. I said, join you? Well, like, who are you? You know, I said, I'm going to Europe. Europe, I don't know nothing about Europe, the money, I don't know anything.
Right.
So I said, okay. So we would rehearsal down at West Beth, down at Stanley Cowell's place. Freddie Wakes was living in the building.
Okay.
Freddie Wakes was living in the building. Then you had the Black Ensemble Orchestra downstairs. She was downstairs in the basement. So what I did was I went to Europe, 1971.
Mm.
And that turned out to be very successful. I was able to see all the avant-garde guys were there. When I
Yeah.
got there, there was Sonny Murray and David Murray, Alan Silver, Archie Shepp,
Archie Shepp.
Frank Wright,
Yeah.
Jerome,
What about
Jerome,
Andrew Surreal?
who?
Andrew
Andrew
Surreal?
Sherrill, yep, he was over there too. There was a certain group of people, avant-garde bunch hung out with them, and you had the bebop bunch, you see?
Yeah.
So you had Kenny Clark,
Kenny
and then
Clark.
there was the River Bop, the Shocky Pesh, different clubs. There was like 10 clubs all over Paris. Then you
Mm.
had Art Simmons from Philadelphia. He had the piano bar, the
Yeah.
living room. And I used to go over there, and Joe Turner used to smoke his big cigars and stuff. Then you
Yeah.
had Memphis Slim. That was another. Then you had the place where Buck Powell and them used to go,
Oh,
Sarah's Red Beans and Rice.
yeah. Bud Powell. Wow.
You go there. But Paris had when I first went, it had the Bill Bouquet, and downstairs was Jimmy Golay playing guitar, Lou Bennett played Hammond organ, and Kenny Clark was playing drums.
Luke. Man, that's incredible. So that first European tour for you was pretty big. I guess it was mind boggling for you, life changer, you know?
It was a state of shock.
Yeah.
Leaning buildings and everything was old and looked like the Bronx, like somebody knocked the windows out or something. I never seen anything, and I'm scared. The money was big notes, and the
Yeah.
dog
Wow.
in the cafes, the French beret hats. I mean, they still had the citrons. I mean, it was all you couldn't to make a call in New York from the hotel room was $50. So you had to go walk to the PTT and they give you a number, you stand online and they put the call through for you.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Alvin, I wanted one person that you work with that I was definitely interested in asking you about. She's incredible. Is Nina Simone. How did you get to work with her, man?
Well, when I got here, Nina was living here. See, a lot of them was living here. You had
Okay.
Nina and Mary Bakiba used to battle all the time. They were both here who can cook the best, And Nina was here, and then Randy Weston.
Oh, yeah.
Randy Weston was living in Annecy, France, because I was with his big band at first. It was Randy Weston's big band. Idris Suleiman was in there. Bill Saxon was in there. And then Jimmy Woody, the bass player, was in there. And then we had Big Black played conga drums. He was there.
Yeah.
It was James Spalding was in there. We had a pretty big band there. But that didn't last long. That was only for a tour around Europe and Paris. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Nina was here. They have a festival here. And I met her in July or something like that. And she says, "You got a car?" I said, "No, I want you to drive me to Paris." I said, "No, I can't drive." I mean, Nina was wild, man. And the way I met Nina was on a gig. I wasn't supposed to be on the gig. I supposed to have been the escorter to the gig.
Right.
Nina came from Copenhagen to Geneva to change planes to go to Barcelona. But she got off the plane, went checked in a hotel at a big swimming pool. So I just came in from Spain with my own band back home, and I got a call from the promoter, "Queen, I got a problem." So I said, "What's wrong?" "You got to do me a favor." I said, "Look, I don't want to turn around and come back." So he bought business classes, sent me to the hotel. So I said, "Nina, my name is Alvin so-and-so." She says, "Nobody calls me by my first name." I said, "Well, Miss Simone, I'm here." She says, "I'll be right down." She came down, she bottle of champagne, sitting there at the swimming pool. She says, "Sit down." I sat down. She says, "Everybody has treated me so wrong and blah, 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 blah." I said, "Nina, I know that, but he asked me to try to make arrangements so you can catch your flight and go to Spain. I will only go to Spain if you go to Spain." So I called the guy. He said, "Anything, Queen. I got a TV show."
Wow.
So the guy sent 2 business class tickets.
Yeah.
So I get down there, we get to the TV theater, and they got her drummer, and the drummer came in with his little stick. She says, "This is your drummer, Miss Simone. I don't want him. He's too timid. I want Alvin to play with me. So,
Wow, man.
so I played the gig with her just to get it quiet, keep it quiet.
Yeah.
And then I came back from down there. When I got here, she had something for the United Nations to do. So the plane, we were playing land, they had United Nations cars. At that time, a terror, the machine guns. I said, what is going on?
Wow.
So from that connection, that's how I said it, and then was working with her. Then the next time I saw her was at the Amsterdam Festival, and Kenny Drew was on piano. Okay. And I think it was Harry Sweets Edison or Buddy Tate on tenor saxophone, or Clark Terry might have been there.
Right.
And they said, hey, ladies and gentlemen, Nina Simone said, let's bring her up. So they brought her up. You know, Kenny Drew, he just wants to go hang out at the bar or something.
Right.
So
right.
she told Kenny Drew, Kenny said, yeah, well, so, oh, here's the piano. She said, oh, you're not good enough to play with it.
What?
Oh, yeah.
She's something else, man. Wow.
But I was doing USI Information State Department tours for Africa, for Japan and Brazil, and I needed an endowment for the arts. And Nina Simone gave me that endowment for the arts, and Randy Weston gave it to me. That's how I got the budget from the State Department.
Man, that's incredible. That is incredible. And how did you get to, I guess, work with Oscar Peterson? You had I guess, a good period with him. How did you hook up with Oscar?
Well, I had, you know, it wasn't Oscar from the beginning. I knew Oscar since 1983.
Gotcha.
Okay. And I met Oscar while I was working with Junior Mance.
Okay.
Okay. And during the time I was working with Junior Mance, I'm not sure if Earl May was in there. I think Earl May, the bass player, is in there. Or the bass player used to be with Louis Armstrong, Jack Lesberg.
Okay.
Okay. And I met Oscar in 83. And Niels was with Oscar. Okay. So I did a lot of work. Me and Niels and Uf Arkenians had a group together.
Okay.
Okay. And we were traveling around Sweden and all of that. I became very good, very close to Niels, you know. And Niels says, Alvin, that gig with Oscar, I don't know if it could gonna work. That was 20 years before, because he said, you know, Oscar's very strict, very so-and-so.
Yeah.
I said, okay. So then what happened was I got to do Kenny Drew's 10 CDs, because Kenny Drew was big in Japan. Okay, so I started recording with Kenny Drew. And after that, Niels has always been a part of that, you see. But then Martin Drew was he was there with Niels and Oscar, okay? So I had just come in from Turkey, I think, from a trip, not sleeping because I had to fly 6 a.m. back to Switzerland. And the phone rang, and it was Niels saying, Alvin, you got to do me a favor. You got to do me a favor. So I said, Niels, look, let's talk later. I'm dying, man. I got to get some sleep. No, right now. He says, I'd like for you to join Oscar. I said, Niels, I don't feel like going through that, because I heard Oscar could be a very hard person. So he says, well, what did he do to you? I said, he didn't do nothing to me. I said, I'm not going to give him a chance.
Right.
So he said, no, you would be doing us a big favor, because we knew how to play together. It was Ulf and myself. We had our own group. And that was the group around Oscar, you know. So I said, Niels, so he said, stay right near the phone. Oscar gonna call you. I said, not now. Later, I gotta go to bed. No, now. Like that. So I said, all right, I'm sitting on my desk with my head down. And the phone rings and it says, hello, Alvin? I said, yeah, this is Oscar Peterson. How you doing? I said, I'm doing fine. He says, you know, I've been hearing a lot about you, but we never had a chance to really get together. And I got a few dates I wanted to know, would you be interested in doing with me? I said, sure, Oscar. And I said, I'd be glad to do it. He says, what's your fee? I said, well, that's for you to judge. Okay. He said, well, we'll start it off and gradually it'll go up. And then he says, I said, what's the dress code? He says, tuxedo. So I said, how long is the tuxedo? I said, until I tell you take it off, you know. So I said, okay. So, you know, after that, he said, I'll send you the schedule. He sent me a schedule, and it was Seattle, New York City, Japan. We had 2 or 3 days in Japan, big concert halls. So I said, okay. And then I went to his house for rehearsal. You flew up, because everything you do with Oscar is first class and business class.
Yeah.
The flight ain't no economy. Forget that. You know,
Yeah.
I flew right with him. I was sitting with him all the time in first class, business class for almost 3 years.
Wow.
I put the wheelchair forward. I did a lot, you see. So I went to his house and rehearsal. I remember, man, I first put the cymbal on. He was sitting at the piano. And he says, he was looking at the piano. He says, I've only had trouble in this band only with musicians who play those things. You see, so I was prepared for him anyway. I just shut up, kept putting the cymbals on and doing, and then the rehearsal was only half an hour. And then I said, I guess we'll take a break and everything. So let's go upstairs and look at the news now. So we went upstairs. He has electrical stairs because he had the stroke. He can go up. Right. And he sat at the station, and you sat there, whatever, looking at the news with him. And I said, "Are we gonna rehearsal? Rehearsal? We're finished with rehearsal." So he would say, "Niels, get with him when you have time," like that. So all the endings and all of, you know, I learned his music in 2 weeks.
Wow. Wow.
What type of I never saw any sheets of music. I had to
You know, Alvin, what type of a person was he? I mean, you know, during that time period when you worked with him, I mean, did you guys end up having a really good rapport with each other? Or was there any conflict ever? Or you guys were okay with one another?
No, Oscar is like an angel. He's a family man.
Yeah.
He's an organizer, okay? And the problem with Oscar is just that you have to, his father was a Pullman guy, conductor or something on the train years ago, okay? And Norman Grant came and got him, okay? And he lives a family life. It's like if you have a lady, okay, she's welcome, but I don't want to see another one.
Yeah.
You see, he's straight up. I got a daughter to raise. He was like that.
Yeah.
And he was the type of person, I got to know him because I had church experience, Bible experience. And I remember what loosened him up once. I said, you know, Oscar, I went in the store and my mother, man, I wanted something and I took it and she said, put it back. I said, no. And she beat me right in front of the store, in front of all the people and everything. I was a kid. He said, yeah, that's what happened. That's what happened. And then these little things start gelling. Yeah. You know, they start gelling. And what happened was, the way I knew he was a camera addict. Okay. He was a camera. He loved cameras. Okay. So what I would do, I go into Chaos in Chicago somewhere before I take him to the plane. And I buy a camera book. I say, Oscar, which is the best camera here? Because when we was on the plane, we were in first class. I was the aisle seat. He was in the window. So the middle seat was empty. I always put the camera books there. And he said, this is a good one. This is good. So he had a friend. We could talk about cameras for 4 or 5 hours a day. That's how I started to become a professional photographer, was with him. You see? So we go to Japan and we be buying boxes of stuff. The 3 little guys carrying all these boxes. We go to Japan, we be buying, you know, bringing all the stuff out the stores. So after that, I was very, 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 very close to him. You know, he used to talk with me about Fritz and Ella Fitzgerald and Norman Grant, and he was talking to me because he was one of the creators of that Jazz at the Philharmonics. Yeah, it was based around him. Norman Grant. That's how it all started. And they were bringing different artists in, and then he had the TV show in London. And so, I mean, he treated me good. He treated me very good. I didn't have those bad experiences with him because I knew what he didn't like. Yeah. Fine pianist he was, man. Great. One of the great
greats. And I wanted to ask you, go back a little bit about this record label you formed, I believe in the early 80s, Nilfa Records.
Nilva, yeah.
Nilva, yeah, tell us about that, man. What made you decide to form your own record label?
Well, what happened was I saw Charles Tolliver with Strata East and Gil Scott
Yeah.
O'Hearn and Stanley Cowell. And I watched the success of that label because I was the beginning of it.
Yeah, you
I
sure
was
were.
one of the, I took Jimmy Hops's place.
Yeah.
After the first big band album, 1971.
Music Inc. I have that album. Yeah.
Okay. I was in there. And then what we did, we would rent a van in Europe. We'd have drums. We had everything in there. And, you know, Charles would drive from the southern tip of Spain all the way up to Norway, Sweden, drive back down. I remember one time, if you look at the piano we have on the live thing, it's in France. We did in Paris. That was the first concert. The little piano there, that was a spinner piano. And it was small enough to put in the van. So we had the piano, the drums. Every club we went to, they didn't have a piano for Stanley Cowell. So he said, we got our piano. You know, at that time, you would have to take a set of drums from New York to Europe because the clubs didn't have drums.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
So it was like to bring a set was $350, a whole set, bring it to Europe. And then you take it back to America. Like that. And then the Europeans said it's too expensive because they were being charged. We'll buy our own drums for the club. So it started like that. And then with Stanley and them traveling around, you know, and then afterwards, we did the other record for Injure Records, Impact. We did that record for Impact, and we said we used Ron Mathewson from London. He was a bass player. And then after that, that record was my biggest success in Europe, was the Impact album. Then we did the Lutztrek record with John Hicks and Reggie Workman. That was a big one. Okay, that was a big one. And because they only had 2-hand microphones when they recorded that. The guy was in a wheelchair and he recorded that.
Wow,
see?
that's amazing.
So then there was money to be made, and there was big bands in Europe at the time. They had radio orchestras in Vienna and different. Leo Wright was in there. Benny Bailey was in there. Slide Hampton was in there. Idris Suleiman was in there. Carmel Jones was in there. So to travel through, the radio would give you 1 week. So Tolliver, we knew the music. Stanley and myself and whoever the bass player was, we knew the music. So the horn parts Tolliver wrote. So we would go and he would conduct that. We would do that for 1 week. Then we would move to the next place if we weren't playing clubs. So he built up a whole thing. And then what happened was when I came to Europe, I wasn't expecting to come to Europe because I went back with Horace Silver. And I left Horace Silver and went to Boston. I stayed in Boston for about a year. You know, Jackie Barr was at the New England Conservatory.
Yeah, Jackie Barr, yeah.
Then I left there. I left Boston because they called me about a Barry White gig. But I was no rock drum. I didn't play that tight, but I'll try, you know. Yeah. And I went to Montreal, Canada. And I stayed in Montreal, Canada for about a year and a half.
Yeah, you ended up living there. But I wanted to ask you, why'd you move to Switzerland, man? What made you move there and end up staying there?
Well, in Switzerland, what happened was I met this girl there who's my wife now, okay? But what happened was I made so much money abroad.
Really?
That I never seen this kind of money in my life, okay? And I said to myself, I'm going to treat myself to a record.
Yeah.
I'm going to treat myself to a record. And I recorded with Fred Smith and Francois Lindemann. At the time, they were opening music schools, avant-garde music schools here and another place in Lausanne. And I recorded at the radio. I'll never forget. And they paid about $900 for the whole group, everything. So I said, you know, I like that tape. And can I pay you back? They said, if you pay us the money back, you use the tape. And that's when I put the first record out, Nilva, Alvin Queen in Europe. That was the first one. So then another guy told me, you know, I was dealing with a lot of politicians here. There's a lot of money here, banks or whatever, you know. So I mean, it's always high class people who I was dealing with. So the guy said, Alvin, he says, have you ever heard of an ice cream company with only one flavor? So I said, no, man. He says, well, you got to put some more flavors in there, you know? So then I did the Shanty album, okay, with Spalding and Ray Drummond. And when I recorded, did put the Shanty album up, it pulled the first one up. That's what caught my mind. This is how it works, okay? Then I started off with Junior Mance. Then I started off with Big John Patton. Then I started off with Bill Saxon. Then I started off with Charles Davis. And then I just kept going where the system changed. Then I never had, see, the problem you have in jazz, okay? Companies want to build catalogs, but companies do not promote their artists to the highest level. And that's what hurts us more than anything else, okay?
Yeah.
So I've gotten into that. I have every connection there is. You see what I'm talking about? You can have 50-cent piece or whatever. Anything with advertisers to the neighborhood or whatever, big money is out there. It's coming from MGM. It's coming from, you know, we don't own the system. You see what I'm talking about?
Interesting.
You see, and this is what I try to teach all the young musicians today. It's not about just going to school, playing the music. It's about being with elderly people and learn how to apply the music.
That's right. That's
right. Okay. After you learn how to apply the music, they are your mentors. You become a mentor because you give the music back. Yeah. But you can't change the form of music. It was there before. You see, I used to watch Tony Williams, the cymbal beat, Louis Hayes, the cymbal beat. Yeah. How are they getting that sound? You see? And nowadays you don't dissolve the sound. See, we hear a diminish. We hear a diminish in there. Everybody can't be Charlie Parker. Right. You see? There's gifted people and you got to be able to really recognize that one. Yeah. You see, record companies stay in business, yes, but do they sell records?
That's a good point, Alvin. That's a very, very good point. Interesting. You know, something you and I chatted a little bit about a couple of days ago when we were chatting. I'm interested, I guess, a few years back, the problem that you were denied access back into the U.S., something that happened to you, I guess, when you were a small kid and charges were dropped, but you had a problem. Tell us about that, man. Homeland Security, I believe it was, denied you access back into the U.S. Tell us about that, man.
Well, number one, you always have a problem. All right? You're a black man, so you're going to have a problem. Okay?
True.
I don't really push it that way, but I'll tell you how difficult it is for us. Yeah. At whatever you do, you have to do more work. You have to be educated and you have to be clever enough to go in another direction if it doesn't work that way. Okay.
Yes.
And what had happened was there's an area in the Bronx, New York, and I used to work up there. It used to be a club called Mother Blues. Okay. And I used to work with Kenny Dorham in there. Okay? Kenny Dorham. And Llewellyn Matthews. Okay, I grew up with Llewellyn Matthews, the piano player who was Nancy Wilson's coach. Okay. He moved out there. And then I grew up with the Gonzalez brothers, Andy and Jerry Gonzalez. Okay. We all come up in the Bronx. Okay. And there was a place down the street, and I was with some friends. I'll never forget, it was Thanksgiving Eve, and the friend had rented a car. Okay. And he was looking for some smoke and wine. We were kids, okay? And we couldn't find that. We couldn't find any heavier things. So we were trying to deal with what we had. Right. And the detectives pulled the car over. And when they pulled the car over, one grabbed me by the neck and slapped me and put the pistol into my head, into the top of the car. So I said, you know, if you're a man, you got to do that. So he said, shut up. I said, okay. So they took us down the station. When they took us down the station, they sprung the trunk of the car. When they sprung the trunk of the car, the driver who rented the car had a pistol in his coat pocket.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And in the state of New York, you're not allowed to have a pistol. Okay. So what they did was took us all down the station and they went into the laboratory and they got 4 bags of heroin for each guy. They put the heroin on us. Okay.
Man.
And they put conspiracy of a dangerous weapon. Okay. Meanwhile, the guy who rented the car, his mother came and got him, and the other guy, his mother, they all got out of jail. I stayed in Rikers Island for 3.5 weeks for a $25 bail. Okay. So I got out. When I got out of jail, I was still working with George Benson, but we would work to a jazz workshop in Boston. I had to fly between Easton and New York, play the gig and fly back to court. I had to do that for a couple of times. Okay. So I told Jimmy Boyd, and Jimmy Boyd always had musicians and lawyers for Grant Green and different people, you know. So he said, call this man, Mr. Benjamin Petsagoff. So Benjamin Petsagoff took the case for $200. So I went to court and Benjamin Petsagoff, he says, I went back and forth. He says, I said, why don't I just plead guilty and get this over with? He said, shut up, I'm your lawyer. So I said, yeah. So he says, what I'll do is give me $50. I said, $50 for what? He said, I know the judge. I went to school with him. We're going to prosecute you. I'm going to take him out to lunch. He took the judge out to lunch. So when I went before the judge told me, Mr. Queen, you know, do you live in that area? I said, no, sir. I said, I was hanging out with some friends. He said, well, you got some bad friends. He said, I tell you, do you live there where you live? I said, I live in Mount Vernon. He said, I advise you to stay there. How do you plead? I said, I plead not guilty. He said, bam, case dismissed. Get out of here.
Wow.
Okay? So they acquitted me in 1970. They acquitted me in 1970, almost 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And what had happened was I had 2 passports.
Mm-hmm.
I had a Swiss passport, an American passport.
Right.
And then I said to myself, well, you know, I filed both taxes. I was filing both taxes. It was expensive. It was $1,500 per year. I spent $50,000 in a short period of time when I never owed the American government no money. Just to prepare the papers. So I said, let me give the American passport back and I could use the Swiss passport. I don't have a problem. Okay.
Yeah.
So what they did under this administration we are in now, okay? And I'm gonna say it, the Trump administration, I got the damage. So I don't give a damn. You see what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. So what had happened was there was a brother here working since I did State Department tours. I did Brazil, I did Japan, I did all of Africa. That was all the United States government. Okay. I was a friend of Rollins in Ghana, Kofi Annan. They were great friends of mine.
Yeah.
So there was a brother here working at the embassy. And I did Americans Day while he was here. So he went back to Washington, D.C. And he says, look, man, I have this gig. It's in Washington, D.C. It's for the 36th Army guys who came to France. And we're going to try to put it together with the French musicians. Could you help us? I said, I'll be glad to help you. I said, look, I don't have the American passport. He said, we'll get you the papers for your Swiss passport. That's nothing. You come in and do it. We get you an HOB, one of the highest artistic visa there is, and you'll come in, okay? But you had the Homeland Security inside of America, and that was Trump, okay? So now, when they applied for all the papers, they paid $1,500 for the papers. I go to the embassy here, okay? And when I go to the embassy here for them to put the stamp, I put the French band together and the Americans together. I still organized it by telephone. I wasn't there.
Right.
So then I put that together and then they came to me and told me, they called me the next day, Mr. Queen, you didn't tell us you had a criminal record. I said, criminal record? I don't even remember no criminal record. Oh, well, you were locked up in the Bronx at Rikers Island. I said, oh, Lord, where did this come from? See, what happened was, as long as you're a criminal under American passport, you're protected. okay? And you give the, you know, most people say, oh, well, you shouldn't give the passport back. No, I've worked for you. You shouldn't be so dishonest and prosecute me in the way you did.
Right.
That was the thank you that the United States of America said. And that told me who the man was. You see what I'm talking about?
I see what you mean, man. Yeah.
And that's what the problem you have. You have 600,000 cases in New York of kids explored. They can't explore and erase the file there. You see? So what happens if you steal a loaf of bread at 16 years old, when you get 30, you can't work for the Postal Service. You see? So you gotta see it everywhere. But when they say they put me out, you can't put jazz, blues, and all out. I come from that soil. And I could take it and give it to the Japanese, give it to the Europeans.
That's right.
And I've made more money since I left. You see?
Interesting. I was going to ask you, so I mean, how many years have you been living in Switzerland now? Has it been like, what, 30 years or 25 or something
40,
like that?
40.
40. You love it too, don't you?
I'm Swiss. I have a whole nother background doing the pandemic thing for the musicians.
Yeah.
Here, I got a call. Okay. They supplied me with money for 6 months.
I was going to ask you, how often do you come back to the States, or how often do you visit?
Well, I came by, I was there in 2016, 17, before I was blocked. They put that in the computer.
That is so crazy, man.
Yeah, but the whole thing about it, I got 10 colleges in America. If you put all that in there, hey, he's a mentor. Now, wait a minute. He has a birth certificate. He's born and raised here. Wait a minute now. But this is not the time to deal with that. See, now the time is coming.
Yeah.
It's falling apart. Now the time is coming. We need those, you see?
You know, you're such an important musician. I was reading somewhere where a lot of younger musicians definitely look at you as that link between like the older guys and the new, and musicians like the late Roy Hargrove and Russell Malone. You know, they're very interested in playing with you because of that factor. But just the work that you've done, man, you've worked with so many great artists, and I look at you as just one of the cats. You know, we mentioned, you know, Max Roach, Art Blakey, Tony Williams, you know, Roy Haynes. You're in that class too, my brother. And I want to thank you so much for being on Jazz Talk. You're a class act, and I just really appreciate you today. Hang on, I'm about to close out the show.
Okay.
Well, you've heard it from the great Alvin Queen. And as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.